You know, real estate is a different business, and I guess it's different for at least 1,000 different reasons. But not the least of those reasons is that you're different, and I'm different. And every prospect, every seller or purchaser that we work with is different. So consequently, no two people can list or sell real estate exactly alike. It just cannot be done. In fact, I wonder how many of you have ever read a book on selling, or perhaps listened to a cassette tape or a record, or participated in a program like this, and in the course of that experience, you've either read about or heard about that superhuman, mythical sales personality. You know, the one that does everything perfectly. They answer every objection, they close every time, they never miss. May I see a hand if you've ever heard of the superhuman salesman? All right, I'd like to ask that question, because I think, number one, I'd find out who's been reading books on selling. But also, I wonder if your experience is not pretty much like mine. I find that so often, I'll pick up a cassette tape or a book with the intent and purpose of increasing my own personal sales skills and abilities. And the course of my experience of reading the book or listening to the tape, I almost said disappointed. That's not I'm frustrated, because all I seem to hear about or read about is this superhuman, mythical sales personality that simply does not exist. To be successful in real estate, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to first be ourselves. In fact, I have a theme song. It's a tune that Sinatra recorded, at least 10 years ago now. How many of you have heard My Way? May I see a hand? All right, I have it taped. I have it in my home, I have it in my office, I have it in my automobile, because I honestly believe the lyric to that song, My Way, is the first prerequisite to listing and selling real estate successfully. Now, I mentioned that for a reason. During the course of this program, we're going to be working on listing and selling skills, techniques, and ideas. But I want you to understand right now at the outset that the purpose of working on those ideas is not to stereotype any two of us. That is, not to cause any two of us to list or sell exactly alike. But rather, what we're going to do is take proven ideas used by other top producers like yourself. But most importantly, we're going to take those ideas in their purest form and break them down and shape them and mold them to our own individual personality. And of course, once that happens, you know, once we can take the ideas that really help others succeed and make those same ideas our own, that's when we become more professional. And that, in essence, is the entire purpose of a program like this. I think to do nothing more than to help each and every one of us have that very slight professional edge a greater percentage of the time. Now, I want you to keep one thing in mind throughout this entire program, and it's this. If we can't make it being ourselves, we certainly won't make it trying to be someone else. But we do have a responsibility to self, and that is to become more effective, use more of the God-given talent and ability that we have. In fact, John Ruskin once made a statement. There's only one small corner of the universe that we can be certain of improving, and that's ourselves. And the purpose of this program is to help us improve ourselves. The purpose of the program is to help us acquire that slight extra edge of professionalism. You know, I've had the pleasure now of traveling nearly 4 million air miles. 17 years of working with people in the real estate business, and the more I've worked with people in our industry, the more I've become convinced that the difference between just mediocrity in production and really outstanding performance is nothing more than a slight extra edge of professional ability and know-how. Now, I know so often when we get together in a group like this, and sometimes even when we look around our offices, we see someone there who has 4 times our income. You know, they outlist us 4 times. They outsell us 4 times. And when we see that person who earns 4 times what we do, we just don't understand it. You know, we look at them. We can tell just like that they're not 4 times better looking. See, we've had a conversation with them, and based on that conversation, we're willing to bet that they're not 4 times as intelligent. We know how hard we work. We know how we apply ourselves, and we're willing to wager that they do not work 4 times as hard as we do. And we think to ourselves, what is the difference? Now, if someone in this program has 4 times the income of another, or someone in your office has 4 times the income of another, let me assure you, it's not because they're 4 times better looking. It's not because they're 4 times as intelligent. It's not because they work 4 times as hard. It is quite simply because they possess a fine extra edge, a slight percentage of professionalism. And it's true in any field, not only in real estate. You know, I think one of the quickest ways to illustrate it, if I have a hobby or something I like to participate in, I guess other than business, be with my family, it's the game of golf. And I think what's occurred in the game of golf illustrates this professional image perhaps as effectively as anything else. Last year on the professional golf circuit, there was a journeyman golfer, certainly respected by the fans and respected by his peers, by the name of J.C. Snead. Last year on the pro golf circuit, J.C. Snead engaged in 30 golf tournaments. Now, his stroke average, his ability to play for those 30 tournaments, was 70.77 strokes per 18 holes. For his efforts, because of his ability to perform, J.C. Sneed earned $124,000. No question. Mr. Sneed is definitely a professional. Mr. Sneed is very effective in his profession. But you know, during that same year, in the same business, on the same tour, there was another golfer by the name of Tom Watson. Tom Watson participated in 20 tournaments. Tom Watson's stroke average for 18 holes of golf was 70.02 strokes. Now, the difference between Sneed and Watson, the difference in their ability to perform, their difference in effectiveness, was 0.75 or 3/4 of a stroke in 18 holes. Now, because of that slight extra edge of performance, because of that slight extra edge of professional ability, because of that 3/4 of a stroke, Tom Watson earned $462,000. Tom Watson, the most effective man in his game, earned $338,000 more than J.C. Sneed because of 3/4 of a stroke. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the same thing is true in the real estate business. The difference between mediocrity and really outstanding production is nothing more than a slight extra edge of professional ability. It's true in any field. In the field of baseball, throughout the history of the game, there have only been 3 players good enough to have a lifetime batting average of 350. Roger Hornsby, Joe Jackson, and Ty Cobb hit 350 as a lifetime batting average. Now, a good German ball player, he can play on anybody's ball team. The fans love him, hits about 250. Do you know the difference between the 250 hitter and the 350 hitter? The difference between the German ball player and the superstar? Well, at today's prices, about $1 million a year difference in income. But the reason for that $1 million a year is that the 350 hitter, the superstar, hits the ball 1 more time out of every 10 times at bat. A slight extra edge of professional performance, a slight extra edge of professional ability. Now, the purpose of this program, as much as anything else, is to help each and every one of us here in the studio audience, and to help each and every one of us in the television audience in our own personal, unique way to acquire that slight extra edge of ability. Now, if we look at a Tom Watson, if we look at a J.C. Sneed, if we look at a Roger Hornsby or a Joe Jackson or a Ty Cobb and try to determine the difference between the journeyman and the superstar, there is a reason for that slight extra edge of professional performance, and it's this. The superstar, ladies and gentlemen, possesses 2 things that so often the ordinary producer does not possess. The superstar, first, possesses skill, a greater degree of skill, a greater degree of know-how. Now, if we go to Webster's dictionary and we look up the word skill, here's the way it's defined. Skill is defined as the ability to effectively and readily utilize our knowledge and ability for execution or performance. Skill is defined as the ability to effectively and readily utilize our knowledge for execution of performance. Now, if we think in terms of that definition, there's something inherent in it. When we think in terms of readily and effectively utilizing our knowledge and ability, that means we must be able to utilize our knowledge and ability instinctively, without even thinking about it, as a matter of habit. You see, Tom Watson, when he stands over that golf ball, doesn't have to think about how he's going to hit that golf ball. He does that automatically. The truly professional real estate salesperson does not go in the presence of the prospect and have to be consciously concerned about what they're saying and doing. In the presence of the prospect, they have the skill to be able to free flow, to readily and effectively utilize their knowledge and ability for execution and performance. I had the importance of really developing skill and skills training brought home to me this past Christmas, perhaps more effectively than any other time in my life. I have a little friend who's 10 years old, who fishes with me and hunts with me, and for Christmas, I made him a gift of a .410 double-barrel shotgun. When I was 10 years of age, my father had given me this gun, and I've kept it all my life, and I think so much of this little friend, I gave him the gun. And I brought him over to my home and presented him with the present, planning to take him dove hunting that afternoon. And I made him stand in the kitchen of our home and break the gun, break the breech, and act as if he were inserting 2 shells and close the breech. And I had him do it over and over and over again. Well, after about 30 minutes of just breaking this gun, act as if he were putting shells into it, he began to rebel. I kept saying, guns go off,
You've got to know how to utilize the gun. If you're going to have the present, you must take it and be skilled and trained in how to use it. He got so angry at the 10-year-old, he didn't want the gun. Now, you'd imagine the frustration of a 10-year-old child when he turned down the shotgun. Finally, after an hour and a half in drilling him and using that gun, telling him the guns go off, we went to the dove shoot. I put him in my car, and we drove over to a friend of mine, Ray Moss's home, pulled up and parked in the field and got out of the car, and there were a group of guys standing around waiting to go in the field. And as we were standing talking, some birds flew over, and they automatically opened fire. Well, when that happened, I reached over, opened the back door of my car, took out a double-barrel 12-gauge shotgun, put 2 shells in the chamber, closed it. Both barrels went off. I looked up, and there was a man named Frank Cathy standing not more than 15 feet from me, and I saw him get hit from here to here. He grabbed the back of his head, hollered, "I'm hit," ran about 15 feet and stopped. He no more stopped than I got to him and jerked his pants down and jerked his jacket up. He wasn't marked. I looked back and realized I had shot into the ground. He was hit by the ricochets, and by the rocks, and by the dirt. Now, Frank Cathy avoided being killed or severely injured for one reason. When I was 10 years of age, and my father gave me that shotgun, he made me stand for an hour and a half, put 2 shells in the breech, and close the breech by pulling up on the handle rather than the barrel. You see, if I'd pulled up on the barrel of that gun, I'd have shot that man. I didn't think handle. That happened instinctively, naturally, because of skills training. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we think in terms of skills training, of having the ability to perform and perform professionally at the level of a Watson or a Ty Cobb or a Roger Hornsby, it's being able to utilize our knowledge readily and effectively, instinctively, as a matter of habit, naturally, as a part of our own personality, without thinking about it, for professional execution and performance. Now, the second thing, when we look at a Tom Watson or a superstar that they have in addition to skills, is they have an image of self as a winner. They believe that they are winners. William James, the father of modern-day psychology in our country, made this statement. James said that we can change our conditions. We can change our environment by changing our attitude of mind. Now, when James made that statement, changing our attitude of mind, what he was referring to primarily was our attitude or our belief in self. We cannot accomplish anything, ladies and gentlemen, until it becomes a reality in our minds. If we'll read about successful people, if we see them when they're interviewed on television, we find that constantly when they talk about performance, they talk about being mentally ready for the competition, mentally ready to participate. What they're saying is that they see themselves as winners. Once again, we cannot accomplish anything until it becomes a reality in our mind. Now, when we think in terms of developing listing and selling skills and techniques in the real estate business, we must recognize that we cannot use those skills effectively until we see ourselves as a winner. To help you visualize upon your screen of your mind what self-image does for us is this: it's literally impossible to look at ourselves and rate ourselves. But if we could, and we could look and visualize self, and if we could rate ourselves, let's say from 1 being the lowest up to 5, so that we could be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 image of self, and then if we looked at the job of selling real estate, and we were to rate that job in our mind from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, if we see ourselves from a standpoint of self-image as a 3, and we view the job of listing and selling real estate as a 1 or a 2 or a 3, we do it readily, easily, because we know that we can accomplish it. On the other hand, if we see ourselves as a 3 and we see the job as a 5, we cannot do it. We cannot do it. Because in our minds, the job is too difficult for us. Henry Ford once made the statement, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. Managers in the real estate business for years have been frustrated with the fact that they have people in their offices that have all the ability in the world, who have the talent. The manager is certain that that person will be successful. Unfortunately, the person does not see themselves as a success. And since they do not, since they see the job as being beyond them, they're unable to use the skills and the God-given and talent ability that they have. Now, since we're going to be working primarily on increasing our skills, we've got to have a self-image that is compatible with using those skills most effectively. So we're going to begin at the outset of this program by discussing self-image, but to find out how self-image is acquired, why we have the self-image we have today, and what we can do to modify it. Now, from the standpoint of definition, ladies and gentlemen, self-image is simply nothing more than a group of subconscious pictures we have of ourselves. A group of subconscious pictures we have of ourselves that affect performance. Now, in order to understand how we've developed our self-image and begin to move towards modifying it, we need to have an understanding of the mind and how the mind functions. Now, for our purposes, we're going to divide the mind into 3 different distinct segments, each of which has different purposes. Now, the first segment that we're going to talk about as we begin on work on modifying and changing, improving our self-image, is we're going to take a look at and explore the conscious mind. In addition to the conscious mind, we're also going to explore and get an insight into the subconscious mind and its purposes. And we'll take a look at our creative subconscious. Now, there are 3 distinct parts to our mind that we're going to talk about. First, conscious, subconscious, and creative subconscious. Now, first, let's take a look at the conscious mind and how it functions. Now, the conscious mind has 3 distinct purposes. Now, the first purpose of the conscious mind is to perceive and observe. First purpose of the conscious mind is to perceive and observe. We walk into a home to think in terms of listing that property, and consciously, in our conscious mind, we perceive that home. We observe that home. We determine how well it's kept, the condition of the property itself. We perceive, we observe our sellers based upon what we see. We listen to them carefully to find out what type of pressure they're under. We ask questions to get information to see what their motivations are and the time pressure they're under in selling that property. When we work with a purchaser and we see them, we perceive them based upon how they're dressed, the circumstances which they're in, their automobile. We get an insight and perceive and form a picture of that person and their status in our mind. We ask questions about them, once again qualifying to see what their needs are, what their desires are, what they want into a property. So first with the conscious mind, and it's a conscious act to perceive and observe. Then after we have perceived and observed, the second major function of the conscious mind is to evaluate that information. We evaluate information consciously. It is a conscious function. Now, the third function of the conscious mind, in addition to perceiving and observing and evaluating, is to make decisions based upon what we've seen, based upon what we've observed, based upon what we've taken into the conscious mind through the senses of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, because we do perceive and observe through all 5 of the senses. We then evaluate and we make decisions. Now, as part of the decision-making process, we also program ourselves consciously by setting conscious goals. We program ourselves by setting conscious goals. Now, you're here, and those of you who are in the television audience, they're in the real estate business because consciously you've made a decision. Consciously you have set a goal. That is to become successful in real estate. I compliment you because you have made an unselfish decision. Success is never selfish. Success is never selfish because we cannot succeed in any area of life unless we adopt the servant role. We cannot succeed in any area of life, whether it's in our family life, whether it's in our social life, or in our professional life in the real estate business, unless we serve other people, unless we solve problems of other people. So success is never selfish. Failure is selfish because in failure we make a conscious decision not to serve others anytime we decide to fail. So you have consciously, coming into the real estate business, made a decision to succeed. And I compliment you on it. Now, our subconscious mind, the second major aspect of our mind, ladies and gentlemen, also has three distinct purposes. Now, the first purpose of the subconscious mind is to regulate and operate the automatic functions of the body. Digestion, respiration, the focusing of our eyes, all of those things happen subconsciously. We don't have to think about automatically as a function of the subconscious mind. Now, the second major purpose of the subconscious mind is to store and record information. The subconscious mind stores and records into our minds every experience of our lives. Every experience. The behavioral scientists tell us that every experience we've had throughout our lifetime is stored within our minds. They tell us that the human mind is composed of from 12 to 15 billion nerve cells. And each of those nerve cells is capable of storing from 100 to 200 million bits of information. Now, this was actually first discovered by Dr. Werner Penfield when he was performing a frontal lobotomy, brain surgery, on a patient, and used only local anesthetic, which was a requirement in that particular type of surgery because the patient must communicate with the doctor. Dr. Penfield found that when he stimulated a portion of the patient's brain, the patient totally relived his 10th birthday party. Completely oblivious to everything that was going on in the operating room, totally relived it. Saw the flames on the candle, the piano playing in the corner, heard the laughter and the family singing. Then Dr. Penfield stimulated yet another part of the patient's brain, and they relived another experience. So every experience of our lives is recorded and stored within our subconscious mind. Now, those experiences to which we attach deep emotion are more deeply recorded. It seems that our feeling is about an experience and the emotion we attach to it, that the more deeply recorded they are, so consequently the easier they are to recall. In fact, I'd like to ask you, how many of you here remember exactly where you were, exactly what happened when you saw your first child for the first time? May I see a hand if you remember? Certainly, certainly. Because of the emotion attached to that experience. The emotion attached to that experience. How many of you remember where you were when you got the news that John F. Kennedy had been assassinated? Once again, recall it just because of the feeling, the emotion attached to that experience. So the subconscious mind functions first by actually operating the automatic success mechanisms of the body and then recording and storing the experiences of a lifetime. Now, the subconscious mind has yet a third purpose, and that is the subconscious mind performs automatically any overlearned skill. It performs automatically any overlearned skill. Let's take the overlearned skill of driving. How many of you remember when you first learned to drive, your dad or your mom or perhaps big brother or big sister got with you, and the first thing they did, they took us to a parking lot where there was a lot of room so we wouldn't injure anybody, and got us that automobile, and they showed us how the gear shift worked. We'd been watching for years, dying to be able to drive, and Dad said to us, now, all right, you put that car in low, and that's the clutch, and that's the brake, and that's the accelerator. Now, you press on the accelerator to give it just a little bit of gas, and you let out on that clutch very slowly, and they told us that, and what did we do to the car? Choked it down. Now, through practice, after repeating the skill over a period of time, now we drive completely automatically. It is a function of our subconscious. I mentioned Tom Watson. I said he doesn't think consciously about hitting the golf ball. No, it is an automatic function, see. It's a function of the subconscious. Now, incidentally, selling effectively, listing and selling real estate, is a subconscious function. It happens automatically. The very best of real estate salespeople, in the presence of the prospect, do not have to think consciously about what they're doing. They're able to perform automatically. In fact, I'm going to ask that you do something. Here's what I'd like to have you do. I'd like to have you write on your paper there, I'd like to have you write, just very quickly, sign your name, your normal signature, as if you were signing a check. Your normal signature as if you were signing a check. All right, now you have it done? Okay, now here's what I'd like to have you do. Immediately above or below that, I would like to have you make an exact copy of your signature. An exact copy. Now, make sure it's exactly right. Now, how many of you noticed when you started trying to make the exact copy consciously that it was certainly more difficult? Sure. How many of it doesn't even look like your original signature? Of course not. You see, what happens when we sign our names, that's an automatic function. But once we start trying to do it consciously, then we cannot do it effectively. You see, here's what happens to us in the real estate business so often, especially if we're new in the business when we're starting out. We go in to communicate with a person, and we take an automatic subconscious function, something that we should do naturally, instinctively, something that we should free flow, and we turn it over to the conscious mind. And we jam the gears. We become so concerned about self, we develop purpose tremor, and we cannot perform. Now, within this program, we're going to teach you how to list and sell real estate naturally, instinctively, so that you can free flow it. But to make sure we have communicated with you, let's go back and make sure you have some information in your mind. We said, now, for our purposes of discussing self-image, and we're going to continue to discuss self-image some more, we regard the brain, or mind, as having three distinct segments and functions. What's the first segment? Conscious mind. All right, second? Subconscious. And the third? Is the creative subconscious. We said that the conscious mind has three distinct purposes or functions. What's the first function of the conscious mind? Perceive and observe. Second, to evaluate. Third, make decisions. And as part of decision making, it programs us by setting conscious goals. All right, there are three distinct functions of the subconscious mind. What's the first function?
Automatic body.
It operates the automatic systems of the body. Number two, to store and record, and it stores and records every experience of our lives, and there's something that causes it to deeply etch that information into our mind. And what is that? Emotion or feelings we have about the experience. Third major function of the subconscious mind. To perform automatically over-learned skills. Now, there's a place that we so often get in trouble, as we've said, and that's when we try to take a natural experience, something that should be done by the subconscious mind, and turn it over to the conscious. It jams the gears and destroys our creativity.